Welcome to the Electric Theatre.
Hello, how are you?
Doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Are we talking, are you in Texas right now?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
How's the weather there right now?
It's pretty okay. I mean, it was like a cold night, but yesterday was in the 60s, so it was nice yesterday. Today's going to be in the 40s, so up and down, but sunshine. Otherwise, it's pretty nice.
We had I'm calling you from Des Moines, Iowa. We had a blizzard yesterday, 12, 14 inches of snow some places. So we don't really get that much snow in the last that I can really remember. But, what we do, we're gone a lot. So I don't really remember the last time I saw 14 inches of snow. So it's kind of nice, actually,
Yeah, it must be nice to get all the bugs killed,
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to. It's an honor to be able to speak to you. Thanks for taking the time to in this day to speak to me, especially
same to you. Same back to you. It's really an honor, definitely.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And I think I always try to think about what my show is about, and I vowed long ago, early on in the game, that I would never, do a podcast because I just felt, being an artist, I guess, and I don't even really like that word. I just always feel like people put me on guard, and, there's always an angle, and somebody's always going to get upset, or maybe there's just something I don't want to talk about that probably needs to be talked about, but I'm not ready. So I never wanted to do a show because of those things. So I always try to come up with things that interest me that would make me think, of something with you. So I have this kind of like not obscure, but I just have this like concept I want to talk about because I don't think a lot of people these days really would be able to grasp. But you've been doing this a really, really long time and been doing it with several, two great bands, what you do and Merciful Fate and all these different things that go on and how long you've been doing it. I mean, what was it like when you started where, like, there were no iPhones? You didn't have the opportunity to take a picture of everyone that you met in a hallway at a hotel or what was going on backstage, or you didn't have a video camera that you could just turn on real quick and catch some action, or someone eating shit on the ice out on the street,
Totally,
buses didn't have pull-outs.
So different,
Yeah, so I mean,
it was so different, man. I mean, the beginning, I was interested.
How it really was, because I have a reason after you tell us about it.
Yeah. If I look back, my first concert, for instance, was in 1971, Grand Funk Railroad with Mukta Hoovel as support. Some of those albums I would have only gotten access to through a library back then. I didn't have money to buy all these albums. I used all my allowance when I was a kid to go and buy albums. But I couldn't buy all of those I wanted. So I was totally into music early on. I started recording my own sounds on a reel-to-reel tape recorder before I could ever play anything. My first very much in situation marks guitar was a piece of wood with two nails in and an elastic band between. And I would record those sounds I could make with moving my finger on that with a microphone on this reel-to-reel. Completely primitive, ridiculous to listen to. It didn't sound anything like a guitar, but I was obsessed with the raw guitar sound of Jimmy Page back then, and that was what I wanted to do. And going through all these different stages of trying to record simple stuff that sounded nothing like it, ended up with me saving enough money to go buy an electric guitar. and came back home with it and had no idea why I couldn't make it sound like his. And then there was a neighbor that told me, you need an amplifier if you want to make those sounds. I can help you build one. And then he built that and a little fuzz box, So suddenly I had like the red button on and off, and then the black button. That was the only two buttons, and there was this distortion, and it was always on, that was the early days. And then I started playing with a couple of school pals, but just getting the info of a band coming to Copenhagen, Denmark, and playing. You would read the English music, Melody Maker and stuff like that, newspapers. You would see that they would go on tour. You would buy a magazine called Go Go or something stupid, and in there you would look for tour dates, if any bands were coming by. And then it was your local newspaper you would look at to see the actual venues would announce if bands were coming by. Suddenly you said Black Sabbath or Deep Purple was coming by, and it's like, oh my God, got to see that. So also, like, I think it was 1972, I saw the same concert that Lars Ulrich was. It was his first concert. I had been for a couple of years going, but there was Deep Purple and touring the Fireball album. Actually they had not released Machine Head, but they had Fireball. It was practically touring, but they played new songs from Machine Head, and there were so many bands came by Copenhagen back then. I saw Brian Johnson of AC/DC playing with a band called Geordie, that was not very known. I saw them 3 times live in clubs that held maybe 150 people, So it got very, suddenly he was in AC/DC and all these crazy things that happened. But you couldn't get that instant information, It was, you saw magazines that, they've been out touring for a while. You just didn't know. You would try and keep up with all these magazines and newspapers and get it from England, if you could. So it was definitely different days, and lots of posters on your walls and all this. I've been the music fan my entire life and still am, and it's never lost that spark inside. I so love it today. There's barely anything better than being on a stage, for me. That's the way it is, And still, we are running both bands again and writing new stuff for 2 new albums that has to beat everything else we've done. We have to, and I know we can do it. And then a lot of other new adventures to 5B, that is starting, and because we are now with them, we see a lot of doors being opened that we never thought would be open for us, because we did everything ourselves our entire career. We never had. We had help from Brian Slagel and Case Vessels, Roadrunner and Metal Bay, but we never had that professional, caretaking that we can feel now. How much things are changing, how much doors are being opened. So we are not done yet. That's for sure.
Well, what about the travel? What about the travel back in the old days when you would, you actually had a tour or something? The vehicles, the transportation. Yeah. How different was that than what it is these days?
Oh, we bought an old. It sounds kind of hip. There was a Mercedes van, but it could barely drive. Used, I remember it was blue, but what you could see of it still. And the first time we went to Holland to record the mini LP, we were fighting over who was going to drive, because we all wanted to drive the thing, even though it was like a 16, 18-hour drive. But that was because then you wouldn't have to sit with a Marshall amp on your lap all the way. So, and we had gear loaded on the top. It was horrible. And when we started driving, we were actually rehearsing at some rehearsal rooms right next to Sweet Silence Studio, where Metallica, we also recorded one album there, but they recorded 2 albums there. And when we were leaving that place, the people were standing there watching us drive off. They said, "You're not going to reach the harbor even," because that was like an hour and a half away. The wheels were just standing out. I mean, it looked horrible. We did make it, but when we came down there, they wouldn't let us into the country because we didn't have a carnet. We had no idea what a carnet was. So they said, "Well, you can come in here. You're just going to sell your gear in here. We're not going to allow that stuff." And we had to call the guy from the record label, and he drove, I don't know how long he drove to get to the border and try and help us get it in and sign some special papers. And, and then we went in there and we stayed at a closed school where they had this big dorm room. We just stayed there. And I think they closed the hot water and stuff. So we were just there with cold water, and that was it. For 2 days, it took to record these 4 songs and mix them and everything. So that was our first lesson in just traveling a little bit. And then we were there recording, and we had these 2 days. I had prepared all these backing vocals that I later started using on Melissa and stuff like that, but couldn't use any more of it. The engineer told me I could use one extra. I could double my lead if I wanted. That was it. And total disappointment, And then we started. Hank had the guitarist had special ideas with harmonizing with himself and guitar, and no time for that. He had gotten one shot at the first solo of a song called "A Course Without Soul," kind of a long intro solo, and the producer said, "Okay, that one wasn't good enough, but I mean, we can't keep going. You need to just put it down. This next one you do is going on tape. That's the one we're using." So that kind of pressure, back then was just that was what it was like. We had nothing, no money, and I think we got 6 days for Melissa, and then maybe eight days for Don't Break the Oath, and we were super happy because we could actually do some of these harmonies and stuff like that we had planned, So, but yeah, it was rough driving. Eventually, the first US tour we were in a mobile home that broke down constantly, So nightmares, absolute nightmares. When you finally got into a bus, it was also so old that nothing worked, I mean, no heat in the winter or whatever. It's just. Our first tour was in the U.S. was together with a Canadian band called Exciter, and it went so well that Motorhead was going to do a tour, and they were looking for the support package, and they grabbed both of us, So it was Exciter, Merciful Fate, and then Motorhead, and that was the first tour we did in '84 over in the U.S., which was very interesting with the mobile home and so on, But there was there was good times too, because Motorhead has always been very good to us. I have always had very high views of Lemmy. He always been very, very nice to me, and they helped us a lot in the beginning there, breaking through certain areas, and so there was really good times as well, and some funny memories, I can tell you. And but yeah, that was the first time. That was also when we met Metallica the first time, as far as I remember. And they came to our show in San Francisco. It was kind of funny because it was someone outside. Gene Corey was his name, a DJ from San Francisco then, and he told us that there was a band with a Danish drum outside that would like to come in and say hi. They were called Metallica. None of us had heard of them, It's just we didn't know what to think, but of course let them come in and say hi. A Danish guy. Yeah, his name is Lars Ulrich. Okay. His dad plays tennis. His name is that's Torben Ulrich. And we knew his dad from Denmark. He was a professional tennis player back then. And so we bring them in and stuff like that. And then that's when we started talking to them, and got to become very close friends and all this stuff down the road. So, but very good memories. I remember Kirk on stage knocked me over, headbanging. They joined us on stage for the last song. So. Some special introductions there.
Yeah,
but it was rough.
I ask these questions because I always think in my journeys, these days and any days that I try to make music, I'm always sort of like trying to capture something that I grew up with. It could be a sound, could be a favorite album, favorite band, but that imagination, I would wait for my parents to leave the house so I could pull out my albums and just crank them up on my mom's stereo and just do my thing. So when I make music, I'm always sort of trying to find that heart that I feel came from I see a lot of kids today and a lot of people, there's just so much technology that makes it easier to try and make a song, in a room by yourself where your volume can be on headphones and It's so interesting to hear you say that someone said, "Hey, I can help you make an amp."
Oh yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's where it's all come from, and that's where it's all gotten away from. And I'm not going to say music's subjective because it's for people, but music has had to have changed a lot because what has been offered to it, and I think what's been offered is a lot of efficiency, a lot of comfortable efficiency. And I always think to myself, like when I'm in my bunk in a bus, I always have this ongoing joke, with certain people. We might say at like 2 a.m, I might roll out my bunk and look at someone and be like, "You think King Diamond ever had this bus?" Meaning like, we know we don't have any reason to complain because the people that made us want to do this, they did it without even knowing, that you could have a phone that could take 1,000 pictures or video or weird apps or tons of magazines or just, hey, I got a laptop. I'm gonna go look at some beautiful girls, or I'm gonna go play Call of Duty. I admire and so badly respect. Kind of getting off. One of my very favorite pictures ever in rock and roll is a picture of David Lee Roth and Eddie Van Halen. And if I'm not, I feel bad that I don't know this, but there's several pictures of it. But the one I'm thinking of is David Lee Roth, Eddie, and Alex. I think it might be Eddie and Dave standing in front of an old school McDonald's sign, and I believe it's the one in Chicago, potentially. And and it's a blizzard out, it seems like. It's freezing. The snow's coming down. There's no text. There's no security. There's no assistance. These guys walked in, got their McDonald's, loving it, and they're walking back to whatever vehicle, and who was ever at the vehicle took a picture of these guys, and every one of them looked more rock star than most people look today. I so badly love that I'm not saying people today don't wake up in the morning and worship music, because I know they do. Yeah. I just think there needs to be more time
different, though.
Yeah, I think there needs to be more time spent on remembering that music could occupy your whole day with nothing interfering with it but you and your music. Whereas today, there's so much that can interfere with you trying to be you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're trying to be too busy almost these days, and you don't get. You're not allowed to actually spend that time that you really want inside, because for me, like I also said, it's very much life, that is with this music. Like you said, where it all comes from, these things, the memories, are so important. Music is one of the best photo books you can get, because it triggers so many memories when you start listening to stuff you hadn't listened to for a while. Suddenly you remember all kinds of things that are still in there, but you need that trigger, And for instance, you mentioned this with pictures, and you can't just take a phone, and you couldn't do that back then. I still have my old Polaroids, I can tell you. I mean, there was one tour where I burned my legs so bad. I was lying at a pool in a motel somewhere, and the other guys had gone in to eat lunch or whatever, and I had fallen asleep. So I was lying there frying. And when I woke up, I could barely walk, and we had to continue the tour, So I was playing with these burns. And the first night, I was so burned that when you start sweating, my skin was full of bubbles with water from my body inside, So I had blisters all over, legs, the chest, my face, everything. And I spent a whole night sitting popping these bubbles in a bathtub. With the makeup still on, came straight off stage and went to the hotel, and it's like, I look at myself, it's crazy what's going on. So I did that, we got aloe put on, and I have these old Polaroids of me sitting in a bathtub with the needle and popping these things, and walking on the streets of San Antonio, I remember, with aloe on my legs and then powder put on them afterwards, in shorts, which I rarely ever wear. Just weird things, And one of our friends back then, he had bobcats and in his backyard, and I'm standing there shaking paw with one of these. Completely idiotic, but I have a picture of it, and these are these old Polaroids, and on the buses, on the mobile home, and all this stuff, those are invaluable. You can't put a price on those pictures. For me, myself, I take them out sometimes. I have them downstairs. I can go straight down and find them now, and know where they are. And sometimes they get out and sit and look at them, and they bring such heavy emotions out, and memories from back then. So I actually, during playing shows at that time when I was burned, I could barely walk, I can tell you. I filled my boots with water, with cold water, when we went on stage, and walked around with water splattering out of them. And then whenever there was a short break, I would go into a shower and just dose myself with cold water and then fill the boots again with cold water. It was absolutely the worst tour I've ever been on. But when it comes to that, yeah, I have some of it documented too, So.
Well, those Polaroid is my favorite medium for cameras. And I was thinking earlier on, I still shoot Polaroid mainly, and I'm actually always in talks with people about Polaroid, done a couple books. But when you earlier were talking about those reel-to-reel tapes with that piece of wood with rubber bands, I was thinking, oh my God, like you need to press that and then add it to some of your favorite Polaroids and release it, because, I mean, I try to explain to kids today, I'm 51 years old. I'm not old by any means or young by any means, but I try to tell younger kids that, when they're on a platform, and if the world's greatest artist were to put up a piece of art today and tell the world, I spent my whole life working to get this technique, and today it hit, and I created this, and I'm most proud of it. People today would just look at it, they'd push the like button, and they'd be like, what else you got? So that's why I say, oh my God, for me, it's not that, obviously you can make money doing it, and obviously there's money to be made. But for me, it's priceless to think that you were so young, putting together ideas of wood and rubber bands and actually somehow getting it recorded through a microphone on some adult reel-to-reel, and that potentially you have that. So for a fan and a music lover and an artist, of course, I would listen to that, because that's how your mind worked at that age. And I try to tell kids about, Polaroids, just about how, really nothing's original anymore. Everything in our head's been said, but at least a Polaroid is of the moment. You could scan it, you could take a picture of it, you could reproduce it, but you could never retake it. So I totally understand what you mean when you pull it out, and you can go from the age that you are now right back to that bathtub with the pain of those blisters and the horrible memory of that tour, and be right back at it. Whereas I feel like people take so many pictures today, I don't even know if they go back and pay attention to what they have,
Exactly, yeah. They might just have been taken in the moment, and they've never seen again, These old things, there's a mood and an atmosphere coming out of them, as well as just what you're seeing. You can almost smell the situation as it was back then, If there was a special smell attached to it, if you remember, that restaurant, you can almost smell what that restaurant was like. So it becomes very vivid. It's just exactly. I mean, pictures that my dad would have, or clippings from playing soccer as an 8-year-old kid, 8, 9, 10-year-old. He would cut out clippings from the newspaper, when they wrote something about us. And it's amazing stuff to have and look at. And I had some of these ideas to use some of this, in certain ways. There was a figurine that was made at one point, and I was thinking, hey, if they ever do another one, I'll do one from them where I could stand as King Diamond and then hold two kids, one in each hand. One would be Missy from the story of them and conspiracy, and the other would be myself as a kid. And then I would try and make it so that myself as a kid would look very much like on these pictures where I was 8, 9 years old. And then they could maybe get a clipping with them if they bought that thing as a specialty next to it, and there's a lot of these things that come all the time. At the moment here, I have a 4-year-old son, he's almost 4. So, and it's the best thing in my life, that happened there, and he is getting a little interested in trains now. So we got him a train for electric, this Bachmann train, for Christmas. And it's fun to see how he's getting into it. I remember through that all of what I went through with my dad, because he had built a giant set for me and my brother. And I remember how it was done, and all the wires underneath this thing that could be flipped up into the wall when it wasn't used, and just how much my dad did for us, of these. He built a racetrack, electric racetrack, and 4 people could drive at the same time. I remember the smell of, I think it was called naphtha, that you would dip the rubber wheels in, to make the cars stick better. It was details, but it was so cool, because I still remember it. I can smell it still.
I know exactly what you mean by the smell. We used to have the AFX, or the TRX or the TRC or whatever it was, but mainly the AFX racing cars. And back then, the tracks were electric, and the tires were actually rubber, and you could buy larger rubber. And my friends and I would hold it. We would pull down the electrode metal things, pull them down more so we could hold the car up and make them do stands. And we'd put the tires in bleach and literally smoke them, And I can still smell that, even right now.
Yeah.
And I know what you're talking about with the train, and especially Polaroids. I want to just share one thing with you. When I was obsessed with taking a lot of Polaroids, I bought a land Polaroid on eBay once, and it came with a roll of film, but what it didn't say was that the roll of film was still in it. So when I got the camera, I was like, oh, they put the roll of film in the camera. So I went out and I took a picture of somebody or a plant, and when I pulled it, it's a medium format Polaroid. When I pulled it, not only did it have the picture of the plant I took, but it had this lady standing in front of a Winnebago from the 70s waving at the camera. Someone had taken a picture and forgot to pull it. And like Polaroid just blew my mind at that point. I was like, somebody had a double exposure, stuck it in a box. 25 years later, the clown gets it, takes a picture of a plant, and I can still smell it, like you say. I can. And the past is. I wish there could be more of those tangible items that worked your brain in a more cerebral way than how easy they've made it today. Because I'm not dissing technology. I'm just saying.
No.
It doesn't help us. It doesn't help us stay in the moment very long, and that's what I worry about with music and art and sustainability.
Yeah, absolutely. Those old ways add reality to the realism is higher, if you want to say that. Looking back at it when you have these items, or you can smell those things, and you can. God, with those things I sit with my dad. You know, he would be he was a member of a film club where he took little short films, and he got some prizes, just local, very local, you know. But he was very into that. He did his own intro pieces with little letters and stuff, and his own logo and all these things. But he did one with me and my brother where we might have been 5 and 2 or something like that, maybe 6 and 3, something like, because we were able to understand what was going on. But it was a little film called Nightmare, and in that we got a beer. He had put the capsule back on the beer so it looked like it was fresh and new. And I opened that beer, and it was just some different stuff inside. There was, of course, nothing alcohol in it. But it looked like we were drinking a heavy alcoholic beer, you know, and then we got all this, and then all these crazy things. All our toy cars started driving around in the train and all these things. And we saw weird masks, Halloween masks coming at us and stuff like that. So, and he got a prize for that one, you know, and I don't have a version of it. I think my brother might have one, but I wish I had that, you know, because that would also be a fun thing for people to see. Me as like 6 or 7 years old playing in my dad's little short movie called Nightmare. I mean, it's almost like you can see where it all comes from. It's right from the beginning. I was allowed to watch black and white TV back then. You know, there was no color in the beginning, not in our home at least. You know, and I was allowed to watch up till late night. You know, Frankenstein or Dracula, the old black and white. You know, with Bela Lugosi and all these. And then go to bed, and then you go in there and you calling out that you can't open the door a little more, you know, because you're sure there's going to be someone coming out from under your bed and do stuff. I remember that so clearly that I was thinking those thoughts back then, you know, and all these things were fed from the beginning to me in some, not in any mean way, but just in a nice, natural way, you can say, where it was kind of healthy, but also that field was enhanced from the beginning, you know.
Well, that's what's interesting, I think, about, you know, like I've been studying a lot about just the simple fact of the word reward and how important the word reward comes into our lives so early. And unfortunately, humans may not have the right humans next to them when they need the right reward. But reward comes in many different ways. Like you're talking about, like, I have the similar thing where my mom would watch TV with me, and then she'd fall asleep, and next thing you know, I'm watching Dracula, you know, and pretty much freaked out of my mind. But because I'm sitting there with my mom, somehow I'm safe, but I'm actually scared to death. You know, and that sounds like a morbid reward, but it's a reward into the journey and path of the artistic, I guess, road that I want to take in life. That all has something to do with it, those things. So that's awesome that your dad made that movie and won an award, and that you're in it and that you contribute. And again, that with the reel-to-reel stuff and some Polaroids just makes up who you are. You know, I guess that's what we've been getting into a little bit, is there's so much that goes in. It's kind of hard to think about what to talk to you about because, I mean, you know, it's many decades, and it's many, you know, you don't talk to many people every day who can say, hey, you know, James Hetfield is asking if he can come in and meet you guys, you know, and then hear you say you become really good friends. That's, you know, that's the best stuff, you know, and
absolutely.
I think people forget as they start utilizing technology today and how easy it is and maybe how quickly they can go over us, they can skip over us, and just how their minds don't understand how many things really are connected in a way that were so harder to make it easier today. You know, I don't know if I'm making sense with that, but I mean, that blows my mind that you're doing a gig and Metallica is like, hey, can we come in and say hi because we're actually fans, and then you guys start hitting up a conversation about music. Next thing you know, you're actually friends, And then you're taking Polaroids, and you're not taking Polaroids thinking you're going to do a Polaroid book. You're just taking Polaroids because you want to remember one day what it was like to be young and be friends. So I think more people today, as they're on their computers and doing their thing, need to remember artists like yourselves and artists like Metallica and try to rummage into the very beginning days and just see how different life looked. It's not like looking at our parents and going, geez, look at my mom with that haircut. I mean, this is rock and roll we're talking about.
You're right.
And there was no efficiency. There were no buses with pullouts and satellites. And, you know, you had to do this because you loved it. And I admire and respect that so much and wanted to say that.
I totally feel all that, you know, and you can think about it with record stores, right? They're gone. I mean, practically gone. And back then, that's where I was hanging out as much as I could. I would take a bus or a train into the center of the city where the big record store was that got all the good stuff from England and the US, you know, and that was, I would hang out there. I would listen to whatever new stuff they had. Just the fact of, I couldn't just press a button to hear the new song by Black Sabbath or Deep Purple or whatever. It didn't exist. If there was a new album coming, I had to find it in a record store. And then I remember vividly, they had these headphones. They didn't put them on your head. You just pulled them out. They had this spiral wire with them, you know. So you pulled a right one up with one hand and the left one up with the other hand and held them up to your ears. And after you were done with the first song, your arms could barely hold them anymore because you cut all the blood off to your hands practically. You're standing with this all tight up to your ears, you know. And man, I mean, I stood there. The first Judas Priest that I heard was Sad Wings of Destiny. And in a not usual store, I didn't normally go there, but I was in there and I went through the albums. I would go by covers a lot, see if there was two guitars, bass, drums, and vocals. It would probably be heavy. Sometimes if there was a heavy organ in there, was also good enough, you know. I want to hear this, and I heard that. I was like blown away by it. Oh my God, this is so heavy. And they had released any other album. Yeah, there was one before that called Rock and Roll. They said, "Oh, did you?" No, they didn't have it. They could order it for me. I don't know. I haven't heard it, but judging on this, okay, get it, you know. And then got it weeks later, maybe a month later, you know. But it was just like, you know, you would stand there with an album in your hand and you would look at the pictures, and that was how you would get the interest of whether to ask the guy to put it on for you. And then you would stand there, and I would stand there. I sometimes listen to a whole album, and my arms were about to fall off, you know. I mean, it was so painful. But that was the thing, you know. And then you bought the album and you took it with you back home to listen to it on your own system. And that was then another new experience, you know, because and the first three vinyls, I mean, I had listened to other stuff on a cassette deck and stuff like that. But I would, the first three vinyls I ever bought was Deep Purple, Fireball, Black Sabbath, Master of Reality, and then Jethro Tull, Aqualung. Those were the first three that I brought with me home. But I already heard the first Black Sabbath and then the second Black Sabbath, but the others had just come out. Then the fourth album I got was the first album by Wishbone Ash, which was really, it's quite heavy actually, the very first one, and still have the original cover and all that from back then. I have a nice collection of all the original covers with special inserts and stuff that you could not get after 4 or 5 years. You know, they stopped producing that way. So I have a lot of very cool stuff to show someday, you know, in the right environment. So yeah, even that, I mean, is, God, it's antiques now, you know, and they play still. I played some of them recently, you know, and it's they still play. It's really cool. The sound that you get on the vinyl, though, it doesn't give you as much as you can get out of it. A compact disc, you know, is what I listen to these days. I always listen on. I had these barefoot speakers. I think they're 1250 watt per size. You know, they have 5 units in them each, and they have 5 amps in them each. So there's an amp for each. There's no crossovers practically, so they are perfect. There's no, if you look at the schematic of frequencies, there is no up and downs. It is straight as an arrow. You know, it's the perfect response you get. If an album is badly done, it sounds real bad on them. But things that are well made, they sound incredible. So I only listen to music on those. I have a smaller pair down in my living room, but have these nice ones in here. And this special studio room I have here, I have one chair in there. So it's total ego room. It's for me to sit there and suck it all in, So it's very good to listen to all the old albums that way. And I still do it, man. I mean, big time. Sometimes I have a friend over who take turns on the floor and then sit and listen and talk music and have a beer.
Yeah, I just recently, we built a house out by a lake. I'm a lake guy, so I had somebody gave me an idea of putting some speakers in the ceilings because you can connect the phone to the network, blah blah. But anyway, what I like about it is that what sold me on it was that I could put the speakers in each room, and then on the network I can select each room. So if I'm doing chores, laundry, cleaning the kitchen, just doing dog stuff, whatever, with my dogs, I can walk from one room to the other room and everything's still at that volume, and I'm staying within that space because that space is what helps me get things done. So, there are a lot of things with technology that do make it fun still, and
oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm with you, man. Most of the albums I bought, I literally would sit in record stores and stare at the album covers, knowing that the band approved it, knowing it had something to do with what was on the inside, something about the controversy they were going to be talking about, or the drama. And I can't ever really remember buying an album over artwork that I actually wanted to take back or gave away. I usually nailed it because it just seems that's how tied in everything was with the music. You'd have a photographer who would listen to the theme and really do their best to capture what you're thinking. And, everything was all into the idea, and I miss that a lot, I miss that sort of effort into making it. I still wait for my family to leave so I can crank the stereo up as much as I possibly can. But it's a little bit different than when Mom and Dad would leave and I'd bust that album out, and it seemed like something I really had to figure out. I'm not saying it's not like that, but maybe I'm just older, but I do love all that old stuff, for real.
Yeah. I'm still stuck there with a lot of the things, but I was never that much into technology in with the phones and all this stuff and the computers and this and that. I have to learn some of it for Pro Tools, of course, but it's always been a thing like, my wife can do that, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And it's like, okay, I fill my brain with other things, and so and there is a lot of stuff after all these years that have been still put in there, and has to have a space where it can be quickly brought out, so I can use it. So, but yeah, I really enjoy those speakers that I have sitting there. It's still like the old days, but I never heard anything that sounds that good. And Andy, the guitarist King Diamond, he has a studio in Sweden. He has the same speakers over there. And so we are very much lined up with each other so we can send stuff to him. I know what he will hear over there when I say, hey, that frequency there is not really coming out right. And he will listen to, oh, you're right, yeah. And we know what we're talking about. And we can hear everything very clear on these things, So it's been helping us a lot to have that connection and that same equipment, And he said, once you get those speakers in your house, you will never go back to anything else. You can't. And he was very right in my case, where at least, it's like, good God, yeah, they're handmade in California, and I think it's up in Portland or something like that. But really, really simple.
I just bought some speakers. I believe they're Genelacs. I'm not sure though what they are. I'm bad with names and remembering all these things, but I have a little studio down in my house, and these speakers actually they sort of like take in the frequency of your room and all the stuff you have in your room, kind of analyzes it and kind of tells you, where it's lacking or where bass is too much, and it helps you make adjustments. And that's helped me because I got a lot of hearing loss and hearing damage. So I always have to try to accommodate myself somehow to make it pleasant to work on music instead of like where it can hurt. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you also have to be sure that you don't go wrong, right, with this when you do stuff, sonically, that you know that when you present something to the other guys or whatever, that it's like, hey, it sounds good. So that's a great help to have.
Well, that's the main reason why I got them, was to be able to, my ears hear one thing in the room, but I don't claim to be an engineer at all. I just barely can get by. I go for good levels, and that's it. I go for good tone, good levels, whatever, and then I give it to the next person that knows more about it. But you're absolutely right. A lot of times in the past, I'd be like, what the hell is this? Like, this isn't what I did. But now I'm a little bit closer to being able to keep that communication straight, like you were saying with your friends. So before we, I really enjoyed this, man. Again,
hey, the same. Very much.
Thanks a lot for just taking time to out of your week just to say hello to someone you don't know. But before we go, I mean, what?
This is pleasure, man. This is pleasure. This is good. It's this is good stuff to sit and talk about too, and a good way to get to know each other. From nothing. Not better, but from nothing, and it's really been a pleasure for me.
Well, thank you. And I generally, for me, I'm better that way because I get really nervous with people, mentors, people, artists. I get nervous in the physical sense, because I just like to build life off of respect and love and these sorts of things. So I appreciate it when you say that, we can get to know each other off of nothing, because that's really what I feel like all of us can do in the world is like, hey, we could just pick up a conversation and then all of a sudden, hey, this is pretty cool. We'll get to know each other and something will continue from it. And that's what's really exciting. So thank you for that. But before we go,
the same.
I wanted to say I was going to bring up your child, but congratulations, having a child. And I'm sure at your age and after all you've done, I'm sure it's just the joy of your life. I had a similar circumstance. Our son is now 17 years old, so it's been a while.
Oh, yeah.
But he was, he was a pleasant surprise, and I was much older when he came in, and it was a much different experience for me. So have a lot of fun with that. But what before we go, what are some of the things you have on the docket? What are some of the things you guys are doing, or what are you doing right now? And as long as the world permits us all to do what we can do, what are you planning on doing?
Well, there's a lot in the works right now. I'm writing with Hank from Little Fate and writing with Andy for King Diamond and writing on my own for King Diamond. For King Diamond, it's an album that's going to be called The Institute, which is part one of two. There'll be two full albums that'll be completing that full story. As the title says, it's going to be some creepy, weird stuff, And for Mercy, I also have the titles there, but I'm not giving it out to anybody at the moment. We have the front cover for the new Mercy too. It's very, very correct, very right commercial fate. It's very back to basics. For my part, with both Mercy and King Diamond, even more King Diamond, I would say, all vocals are going to be lead vocals again, like they were in the old days for me. It didn't matter if it was a choir singing on the right or the left side or whatever. They would still go in and pick up parts of the lyrics to progress the story and so on, So it's going to be anything goes with the vocals for sure. Back to the old style, old days. And for Mercy too, it's going to be very old-fashioned. Hank is writing very much like the old days. And it's nice to feel that we can capture that again, So that's 2 albums that are being worked on that will be done by the time we can go out and tour again, I'm sure. And then there's a lot of other things through 5B, we're talking about. There's a graphic novel. We just signed a deal to put Abigail into a graphic novel. And it's a really good company. I have high hopes for how that's going to turn out. And there's a lot of other projects that go into that mix too. We're going to talk to people. We have a great relationship with Super 7 and their action figures and stuff like that. And I think they might be involved in it in a very special way that we are talking about at the moment. I can't say exactly because I don't know if they are. I'm sure they'll be interested. But we have some very good ideas to put all these things out together. And then there's a whole different thing, like we just sat and talked. There's so many. I could talk for weeks or months, about just the way that musicians live their lives, what have been experienced, how many times I almost died, how many times I did this and that, weird things, good things, how much occult stuff I experienced. There's so much, my experiences with Anton Santa LaVey or whatever. There is so much to talk about. And I've talked to Justin a lot about these things, 5B, and now we want to try and do something that is very unique for me anyway. I was like you said to me in the beginning, I don't really want to do that kind of thing, because I don't feel comfortable. I could never picture myself do this, but actually I can when I think more about it in a special way. To do something on Twitch that would be almost like, okay, let's meet a couple of times a week. It's like having friends over. You can ask whatever questions you have. We can sit and talk for them back. I'll play some old songs or some of my old favorites that you might never have heard and talk some more about these things. And then I'll play some video games for you because I do that a lot to escape reality kind of, or the everyday business life, I play a lot of Battlefield 1 and Forza 7, the racing games, soccer, FIFA soccer. What is it now? They're called Far Cry or what's the other one that is post-war, what is that big one, man? Not Far Cry. Fallout, of course, I played all those.
Fallout. Yeah, I'm not too good with I'm a World of Warcraft guy. But
all right. Yeah. But still, people like to see people play video games. I didn't know that. And I use it as a relaxation, so why not put that into the whole system? And then I look at it as if it's almost like instead of writing an autobiography, I'm kind of like laying it out to where let's experience it live together, Then you can ask questions, or people can ask questions, and we can talk about things together. They can write all kinds of stuff that they might have experienced or whatever, and I can comment my thoughts. And because there is so much other stuff that I did than just music as well, just the way music gave me other experiences. I go to all the IndyCar races that I can. I love cars. I love raw fast cars too, and go to the races I can. And I've seen all kinds of races, and it's like heavy metal when you stand and see these cars come by. The sound is so brutal, It's like if it was normal to put car sounds on, I would go and record the exhaust sound from my own car. It is so loud and brutal, and it would fit perfectly into heavy metal, but it would be too abnormal, I guess. So But that's just different feelings about other stuff, you know. I mean, it's those are things that I enjoy a lot when I relax, you know. So maybe we'll do some of that stuff. We're looking into it at the moment of getting hooked up and do like an autobiography live as we just go. It becomes a program. We can listen to some great little known songs from the past, you know, and that I can dig up, and I can show a lot of things. My autographs from Thin Lizzy, you know, I met them once at a Blue Oyster Cult show in Copenhagen. I think it was 1976 that I went in to see Blue Oyster Cult. I had seen Thin Lizzy 3 days earlier play a Hard Rock Cafe in Copenhagen with Phil Lynott, you know, and then come in there to Blue Oyster Cult, and Thin Lizzy had stayed in Copenhagen. And they were sitting there at the bar, and I came up there and talked to them. They were super nice. And I got their autographs on a flyer that they gave you when you came into the Blue Oyster Cult show. They gave a flyer that had the Blue Oyster Cult's, I guess, biography or something like that on, and their discography. And so I took that and ripped it in half, and they used half of it for signing their autographs on, you know. So I have Butchie's autographs from old days, and Peter Gabriel's from Genesis. I saw them back in 74. Genesis, big inspiration for what I do on stage, you know. Peter Gabriel with Genesis, the old days. Unfortunately, I was the only one going there. We were usually a clique of 5-6 people who would go in and see all these concerts, but that one, no one, it's not heavy enough for us. Oh, you don't know the old song. Are you crazy, man? The Musical Box and Return of the Giant Hogweed or whatever it was. There's some cool old Genesis songs, you know, that are really quite heavy and very intricate, you know. So I went alone and saw it, and it was unbelievable. There's another thing, like you talked about, there was no security with the Van Halen guys there, that Polaroid picture there. When I went to my first concert there, I was 15, I think. I was allowed to go alone. I went to that concert maybe with one friend, but I walked 3 miles to a place called the KB Hall where we played ourselves recently. I saw Metallica there once when they had just released the Black Album last. I went into their soundcheck, and Lars asked me suddenly when we sat there and talked in the hall, said, "You want to hear something of the new album?" "What? You have it here?" "Yeah, we're playing from it." And then he asked his sound guy to play Enter Sandman over the PA. I was like, I'll never forget it. It blew my mind, you know. So there's a lot of these cool. So this is a very special concert hall, you know, where I saw my first concert to Grand Funk Railroad, and I walked there over 3 miles at night, and walked back close to midnight alone with maybe one friend that was also 15. No problem. It was safe enough. My parents said, "Let's do that," you know. And now I can't believe it that it was possible to do that, to walk through the night.
I'm hearing what you're saying, and I know what Twitch is, and I know what people do and things like that. But I think it's incredible that someone like yourself, again, who's been around for a while, just the stories. But what I'm taking from this is what I'd like to share and offer people that are listening to this is that, yes, you know, you can offer stories, you can use names that people recognize that will interest them. But what's really interesting here, what I'm hearing, is that what rock and roll allowed you to learn, fall in love with, have opportunities to do and create because of the wonderful life of rock and roll that you'll be sharing on the Twitch as well. So I think more of what's going on in music these days, which, you know, music's music. It's just going to change its face every second of the day until, you know, there is no more reality. But I think it's super important, even though the colors are a lot grainier and darker and things are hard to understand because people look different, but there's a mentality of love and soul that went into the ability to say, I'm not going to go work here because something in rock and roll and these albums has pushed me to go this way, and the next thing you know, you're doing it in front of people. It's a lot different these days. You know, you can, it's just different. different. So I think what you're going to do here when you decide to do it, it's going to be very beneficial for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people that really love what you do are going to be super happy to be able to take glimpses into your reality, whether they be Polaroids or stories or just some sit there and bullshit about a story that they want to ask you, or listen to a song. So, man, that's the coolest thing I've heard all month. So I can't wait to check that out myself. So that's really cool.
That's where you actually get some good stuff out of the technology, right? As well, because I never thought I would be able to do anything like this, and I don't have to be the one that knows all the technology behind it. I just have to be the lightning rod or something where things can go through.
Yeah,
so it's going to be fun. It's going to be like having friends over.
That's the best way to say it. Anyone who knows me, they know that I have a weird energy, and basically I destroy anything I touch. But it's because, I'm looking at this heater that's in my room right now, and normally I just pick it up without thinking about it. It could be plugged in the wall. Next thing you know, I break the outlet, or But that is what is great about technology. I hate it because I don't understand it. It doesn't fit good in my hands, and I don't know how to run it, and I usually break everything. But for people that are manual like us, all the years of chord progressions and vocals and retrying things and perfectionism. I don't like to use the word failure, but maybe we'll use the word disappointment. All these things that come hand in hand with making our craft and our art, they're important to share, especially for those who have been around way longer than people that come in and are out in less than 2 years and get all the hype. So I'm very looking forward to what you can offer, but it's super important to be able to introduce all of that, those rubber bands, the reel-to-reel, albums, walking at night. Think about it. You nailed the most perfect thing to sort of talk about. I don't normally talk about what's going on in the world because there's just so many people that are suffering, and it's so hard to take an opinion because there are people that are hurting and there are people that have died. So it's very touchy. But like you said, your parents allowed you in the middle of the night by yourself, underage, to walk to a rock and roll show, and it was cool. And no one in their right mind would let their child walk a far distance in the middle of the night to a rock and roll show these days. So it is important, I believe, for someone like yourself to be able to share those stories because we may be able to obtain some of those trusts back, because everything does come back around, and we need to remind ourselves of some of the easier things that can be obtained. So, hey, man, much of a pleasure. I don't want to take much up of your day. Have fun with your son.
I really appreciate what you guys are doing too. Your music and what you've done. You have so many layers in your music and your presentation of your stuff. It's so aggressive. It so becomes beautiful suddenly. You have hit a special thing. Of course, you know that yourself, but you hit a special thing that is you guys unmistakably when you hear it. Which is very important. It's not so often people can do that these days with bands. Come in and create something that is totally you, and you can hear that it's you when you don't think, it's just one of all the others. So that's something that you should definitely you have high respect from here with how you do your stuff.
That means an awful lot coming from you. Thank you so much for that. We try our best. We love our fans. We love our music. We're going to have to do some shows together. I know you're talking to Justin and stuff, so that's not going to be a problem. But, man, I would love to meet you in person and sit down and listen to some old music and talk about some old days. And what would be really fun is if we knew we were going to be in the same place doing a show together, it'd be cool to get 10 albums apiece and just talk about the artwork and how that inspired us to open up that album and actually like fall in love with it because of the vision that was on the outside. I mean, for example, me, let's both tell one. For me, an obvious one is, Scorpions, Blackout, Forks, just crazy art, all kinds of metallic art. Give me one album that really just blew your mind before you even listened to the music.
Well, because I was so interested right from the early age in the dark side, you can say Black Sabbath's first album and the stories about it being a real witch standing out there in the woods, it just had a feel. It absolutely had a feel with me that I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, see, exactly. I don't know. And then next thing you know, you dig in your pocket and there it is. So
there it is on your turntable, yeah.
I think it's very important for all artists who are doing great because they're artists. It's awesome to reminisce the past because the past really created some fundamental stepping stones that have been forgotten. So I look forward to speaking with you again. I'm sure we'll meet each other. Let's definitely do some shows. And, man, you just have a great day and enjoy your family and just keep being safe.
And you too. You stay safe, you and your family, man, big time. And look forward to meet you very much.
Have a great evening, and we'll see you later.
You too. Take care, man.